Brown, nurse attorney from yournurseattorney.com and empowerednurses.org. And we are here today for the Hey Nurses, What's Next? How 21 nurses became business owners and successful entrepreneurs. And today I'm really, really excited to have a very special guest. You know her, you love her, the nerdy nurse, Brittney Wilson. Welcome, Brittney.
Hi guys, thanks.
Thanks for being here. So Brittney is the nurse behind The Nerdy Nurse and co-founder of Health Media Academy, which is an award-winning author and blogger, international keynote speaker, and influencer in nursing and healthcare technology communities. So Brittney's all about helping nurses learn how to be bloggers and profit from it, right?
Yeah, among many things.
Among many things. So why don't you tell everybody about your many things and your businesses?
So I guess I would put it in two distinct categories. The primary way I earn income in my business would be as a digital marketer and nurse blogger through thenerdynurse.com. What I ultimately discovered is there was a subset of my audience that was interested in learning how to do what I do. And it was overwhelmingly clear that most people that looked at The Nerdy Nurse didn't. So I created another brand to cater to that audience, which is Health Media Academy, healthmediaacademy.com. And that's where I teach basically how I've grown The Nerdy Nurse into a six-figure website and business. And we have a book, The Nurse's Guide to Blogging and courses and things like that. So I guess that's the business in a nutshell.
And Brittney still practices part-time, right, at HealthStream Informatics?
I actually am an online community manager and I manage gamification for a company that you may or may not know and love if you still work in the hospital called HealthStream. I'm actually really proud to be a part of that organization because part of what I do is impacting many of our resuscitation products, which is saving lives. So that's pretty cool to me. And it's just a really great place to work that has a huge impact. And for me personally, I never had the goal to escape the 9 to 5. I mean, there's certainly some days where things were harder and I didn't necessarily love it, but I like being part of that team environment, and the company I happen to work for is fantastic. I really couldn't ask for a better one.
That's great. And so you have a six-figure business. Is that on the side basically, right?
Well, yes. And it's certainly, at this point, I wouldn't say it's completely on autopilot, but it is very streamlined and I invest very little energy into it, especially this year. I have an 8-month-old now. So I have done less and less outside of my day job just because I want to spend more time with her. So I have several contractors and we have very basically streamlined workflows, which is exactly what I teach in the book and the course.
Yeah. And I've read the book. She's phenomenal. It's a great resource for everybody. So Brittney, what made you become interested in starting a business?
Well, I think I'm what I would call an accidental entrepreneur. I'm not sure if you've ever heard that. I had done business things since I was a kid. My first venture in entrepreneurship was in the 3rd grade when I brought Halloween candy to school and sold it. And I had a very interesting pricing model. If you were friends with me, you got a better deal than if you weren't. And if I really was not into you that day, you really had a huge upcharge. And I don't know what that says about childhood businesses, but I always thought that was really funny, is that the pricing was on a scaled model. And I actually, once I got rid of those, I realized I could generate a pretty substantial amount of money, and I did it for a while. My dad would go buy suckers and blow pops, and he would do that instead of giving me allowance because I could scale that so much farther, selling them for a quarter, 50 cents here and there. I did that for probably a month or two under the radar. And then the school was not thrilled with it, made me refund some of the money that I had left over, and it crushed my little entrepreneurial dreams. But looking back, it made me realize that my mind was just attuned to finding profit in things. And later on in life, when I started a blog to cope with lateral violence and bullying that I was dealing with at work, and people started offering me money, it took a little persistence, but not much for me to see, oh, there's revenue to be gained here. And then once I opened that first door to revenue, it was like I opened the revenue mall and found tons of opportunities to monetize.
And that's what I want you to hear, the listeners out there. There are so many opportunities. Brittney's making over 6 figures in her side gig, and it's wonderful. There are so many opportunities. So don't be stuck in that 9 to 5 if you don't want to be. But even if you do, awesome. Just like Brittney, just do what you want to do on the side.
Yeah, I definitely, I know that there's in the entrepreneurial sort of messaging, like the standard messaging, it's like escape, escape, escape. And I think it's some of it. If you have a terrible job that you hate, or more likely a terrible boss, that's generally what it is, then I think entrepreneurship is a way out. But I also think it doesn't have to be like, that's not the only path. And so there may be a day when all I do is my own stuff, but there may not be. I really enjoy that part of a team, being part of something bigger. And I don't necessarily have the desire to be the only leader in that, if that makes sense. So I don't like it when people feel like that has to be the only path. There are so many different ways you can approach entrepreneurship. And like you said, I earn more from my day job than I do from my day job with my online business, with my little few hour a week business. So it certainly can scale to be whatever you need it to be.
That's beautiful. So how did you come up with the Nerdy Nurse?
So, and originally I came up with the Nerdy Nurse as a branding exercise. So I had started a blog. I think it was Nurse Brittney or something like that. And I was really very negative, Nancy. I was bullied in the hospital. My boss wasn't taking me seriously. I was basically told to grow duck feathers, get over it. This is just how it is. And I was just super irritated. And so I would go home every day after my shift and write about this terrible nurse and how mean she was to me. And I grew a following of people who were like, oh my gosh, me too, this stinks. And what I noticed was that although I was filling it with lots of good nuggets and wisdom and helpful things, I was probably not being compliant to work policies. And at the time, HIPAA was fairly new. And although I wasn't like egregious, there were probably some things that were close enough to be identifiable. So I went back one day and sort of had some soul searching and thought about what can I do to make this where I'm proud of it. I wanted to be an informatics nurse. That was the career I had decided I wanted to do. It's nursing and technology combined. And I wanted to use what I had built as a launching pad. So I basically looked around and thought about, well, what are the things I would like to be writing about forever? What do I want to be known as? And then I thought, well, I'm a nurse. I'm nerdy. That's some alliteration. And then I could have done Nerdy Nurse on its own, but then I was like, no, I want to bet the singular, the Nerdy Nurse. I am the one. And that's where sort of it popped up. And pretty much it's been gangbusters ever since.
Awesome. And I remember initially you didn't want people to know who you are and your name, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Probably. So when I rebranded to the Nerdy Nurse is when I sort of came out of the closet, but there were probably a couple years in the beginning where I was mostly on Twitter and doing sort of the anonymous work ranting, that it would have been inappropriate for people to know who I was. But frankly, it's real easy to find out if somebody wants to. So you're never truly anonymous online.
Right. And obviously if you're saying positive things in your business is in integrity, not saying that you weren't by any means, but, be seen, because you never know who is going to find you and want to work with you.
Yeah, and in fact, the day job I have today is because of work that I did I did some advertisement work for somebody years ago, and they remembered and sent me an email one day and said, hey, I think you'd be great for this. And it turned out I was a great fit. So you never know where the business and brand that you've built online will take you. And you should always try to put your best foot forward in doing that, which is something, ironically, people think is a little bit controversial, but I'm pretty passionate about the professional brand of nurses and how we treat our social media and what we wear and what we showcase. And, keg stands probably shouldn't be part of it. Really risque beach, bikini pictures probably shouldn't be part of it, but there are certainly divergent schools of thought, but if you're making a business of this, or even if you want to get future jobs in nursing, it's probably something people should think about.
Definitely. Yeah. So what was the biggest mistake you made in your business, and what'd you learn from it?
So, I mean, biggest mistake is sort of a loaded question. I'm a very analytical thinker, and I take very small calculated risk with my business. So because of that, I can't think of like anything that's been like a massive fail, but I've had a lot of little fails along the way. Probably looking back, the thing that made would have been probably the biggest fail overall, and it was mostly just because I didn't know, my first book I wrote, called The Nerdy Nurse's Guide to Technology, I didn't launch it well. I had a really good platform, and it was published with a publisher, they did all the coaching, but I think they thought that once the book would published, I would just go and sell it. And I didn't really understand what a book launch was supposed to look like, and I guess I was waiting on them to tell me what to do. So I wrote blog posts about it. I did a few interviews about it. But looking back, and especially how the world and the internet works today, I could have done a lot more with that. I could have scaled it pretty substantially. I should have had a list. I think I had a RSS feed at the time and not a real email list. I should have had like a what's next. I should have had places for people to opt in and get more. I should have had maybe a mastermind or a course that people could have taken to go with that. So I would say I wouldn't necessarily call it a mistake as much as a learning experience. And I guess aren't all mistakes that really. But that's probably the biggest sort of missed opportunity for my audience, as well as opportunities for revenue, is taking this book that I spent, a year building, and that was hugely valuable to an industry. And I just didn't give people the extra that they needed to make it valuable. As valuable as it could be anyways.
Yeah. So I hope what our listeners are taking away from this is that there really aren't any mistakes in businesses. They're all learning experiences, and that if you have a good product and you take calculated risks, you can't fail, basically.
Yeah. Unless you do what, like, I've seen a lot of the business gurus who will say, I'll quit my job and then I just did it. I think that's like a terrible thing to do.
Right.
I think people should always have money saved and then make a slow exit strategy. It's worked for some people, but for some people, that level of stress will put you under the blankets in severe depression. So like, that would be the only thing I would say, like, try to probably avoid that one if you can.
Yeah. I always say build the plane as you fly. So grow your business gradually while you're still working until you get to the point where you're ready to take that leap, right, and you can count on yourself to get whatever business that you need.
Yeah, at least it has wings before you try to get on it.
That's I like that. Thank you. Okay. So what do you like best about what you do? What's your favorite part?
I guess I really like the ability to make a direct impact. So with the Nerdy Nurse in particular, our business model is one to help nurses gain confidence. And that can be in many areas. That could be in the scrubs they wear to work, how to cope with stress at work. That could be the how to wear their hair. Is there the best way to do makeup? What is a blown vein? Like really just anything to make nurses feel more confident with their work. And we have a very particular system that basically tries to figure out what nurses are asking, and then we answer it. And so it kind of goes down the line. We say, okay, what are nurses having a problem with? Can we provide that solution? And then we go a step further and say, is there a product or service that provides additional value for that solution? So I like how systematic the approach is, and that we know before we publish anything that it should have a varying level of success and it should solve a problem. Whether it makes revenue, there's a math formula I have that pretty much tells me how much revenue it should generate. But regardless of all that, I know it's going to solve a problem and fulfill a need. So I like the relative predictability of the model, and the fact that we're solving problems and providing that service free of charge for nurses. I personally feel a little weird about charging nurses for things. It's like a money guilt thing or something. I don't hate it, but I like to give as much value for free as I possibly can.
Yeah, definitely. I think we all feel like that. As nurses, we want to help other nurses, and we want to give as much value as we can. And then, if you want to learn more, fine, awesome. We have resources for you.
Right. For the things that require more time, more one-on-one attention, there's really no way of escaping that.
Right. So what did you said you have a math formula to figure out how much you're going to make on it?
Yeah, I'm a nerd. So like I said, I take
Wow.
very risk. So I have a series of spreadsheets that I use, and I don't always run it through the spreadsheet. Sometimes I just do it in my head, where I know based upon the search volume for a particular term, how many people are going to come to my website. So if I rank #1 for a keyword that has 100 search results, I'll get about 33 people every month coming to my website, right?
Uh-huh.
So I can assume 33 people will come every month and just rely on straight ad revenue. Well, that's not going to be much. It's going to be like less than $1. If there's a product or service, it gets a little more complicated. So of that 33, I have a conversion principle that I use. Generally, it's around 10% will go buy that product or service. And then I just multiply that by whatever revenue I earn from that product or service. So it's pretty straightforward. You just kind of divide and then multiply. And so for that 33 people, if 10% go buy something, that's 3, and that thing is worth $10, that's $30 a month. So when I write that post, I should earn $30 a month on average from that post. And so I've got it mapped out pretty closely, and the business scales. The only thing that's a little different from the way I do it is search engine optimization is a long game that it's ongoing. So once I publish it, it's not done. So if I want it to earn that $30 forever, I have to constantly be going back and update it. But as long as I'm doing that, it's sort of a stacking a revenue model. It's an additional $30 per article or something like that per month. And then just the maintenance of everything that's already been built.
Yeah. Wow. And this is what you teach in your courses and in your book, right?
I don't get to the level of that nerdiness.
Oh, okay.
I teach more the grand scheme of it.
Okay.
We do teach about conversions and why that matters, but the model I have is not necessarily what everyone else is. Most people aren't going to be blogging for blogging's sake or just digital marketing. They have another product or service. That conversion math works exactly the same. And certainly something I have taught to others if they ask about it. And when we teach, and it's not necessarily outlined in the book, but when we teach at the course, we talk about like how you do projections for your business and in that conversion math.
Okay, interesting. All right. Well, you have been so extremely generous to give a free gift to everybody, and it's the Digital Marketing Checklist and Assessment. Can you share with our viewers what that's about?
So thank you for asking. It's there's a couple documents that you get, and one of them is to make sure that you have your brand presence in order. And then you basically fill it out. It asks you questions about, your business name, your URL, your social media handles, things like that. The other one is basically a nursing assessment that gives you a format to sort of ask questions and then do the assessment and implementation and so on, and then evaluate your outcome. So very nursing focused, and things that will sort of streamline helping you get your online brand and your marketing presence together for your business.
Well, thank you so much. We're going to put the link next to the video so you'll have it. But it's so interesting how the nursing process follows through in every type of business.
Oh, absolutely. It's really funny because the analytical nature in me, which made me a very anxious nurse, made me overuse that process. But in business, it's just as relevant as it is on the floor, except nobody dies, and
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's a lot less stressful.
That's what I've been saying through all of these interviews is that when I ask biggest mistake, nurses are like, oh, I can't make a mistake, because in nursing we're taught, lives are on the line. We can't make a mistake. But in business, that's part of it. But it's all learning experiences.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you basically just have to make sure you're very self-aware of when things occur, and don't beat yourself up over them. Just do it differently next time.
Yeah, exactly. And, nobody's going to die. You might lose a client, but, you might not sell as many books or whatever it is, but it's not gonna, it's all learning.
Absolutely.
So I know your last book, you did it differently, and you had,
Absolutely.
you learned from it.
Yeah, we from the beginning knew that we needed to make sure that the book had extra stuff that you could get online. And then if you wanted more, you could do, we do a pre-conference. We've done that for the last, I think, 5 years. This will be the 5th year at the National Nurses in Business Conference. So we do that live if you need that in person. And then we have an online version, which is Nurse Blogging 101 that we offer for people who want self-paced.
That's great. That's great. So what advice would you give for nurses who are considering starting their business?
The advice I would give is to pick a fairly narrow niche or vertical and test the waters. So I would build your website and I would start putting content out there, and I would see if you enjoy it. I would see if it resonates. I would see if you can attract an audience. I wouldn't even try to start selling anything immediately or trying to generate revenue like right out of the door. I would just test sort of the niche. And if you find out you hate it immediately, then you didn't really waste a lot of time, energy, or effort. If you find that it's not quite right, you can just pivot. What I find a lot of people do is they go all in really quickly. They build websites, brands, businesses around CBD oil, and then they find out that they hate like network marketing and they really can't pivot. They have to start from scratch. Whereas if you built a wellness brand, my friend Kelsey has a brand called Whole Life Nurse. Her brand, she didn't necessarily do this, but this is a good example. Whole Life Nurse is a brand that you could do a lot of things with that. And you could be really hyper-focused at first on essential oils or something like that. And then you could pivot and offer other services. So if you can think of a niche and a brand that can allow you to start really hyper-focused and then pivot if it's not a good fit, I believe that's the best strategy to not have a lot of wasted effort and ensure that your audience can grow with you without having to basically trash everything and start again.
That sounds great. And you also mentioned verticals. Can you explain to our viewers what you mean by vertical?
Oh, I would, verticals it would just kind of be focuses or sub niches. Mm-hmm. So that might be for a wellness business, for example. Your first vertical might be essential oils. And then you might add CBD, which is a little separate than essential oil. So you might add that. And then you might add where you're doing sort of all natural cleaning products, all natural home supplies. Then you might add a fourth vertical or a fourth portion of your business that is health coaching and private consulting. One of the things about that that's actually really important is that most people want to do all of those things at once, and you really can't. You can't do all those things well. You should pick one, give it 100% of your energy. It should be relative to the rest of the business that you want to go, and then scale. I cannot tell you how many friends that I have that are fantastically educated nurses. They've taken 101 training courses and they have 1,000 things they want to do, but they will not just pick one and do that one thing. They get so distracted by themselves that essentially they never really make any money with their business because they're only giving 1% to 100 things. And you're much more effective if you can just give 100% to one thing.
I so agree. I have what's called a marketing pie, where I explain the different components of marketing, and I do it specific to what your business is. And I always say you can't eat a whole pie at once. So just pick one slice and focus on it, do it well, get it going, and then you can go to the next slice.
Absolutely. That is the part I probably did leave off. Once you get really good at one area, then you do the other. You still have to babysit this other area. You can't forget it completely, but you need a lot less energy. Now it only needs 2% of your time, and you can use 98 to build the other. There is a point where you do sort of tap out unless you scale your business with taking on contractors or employees or something like that. So there is a point where you yourself cannot do anything else. So just always be aware that there is a time that you need to bring in other people to get things done.
Absolutely. And one thing that you mentioned too about babies, and I know you have a baby, but your business is a baby until you get it growing, and it goes through the same stages of life that we go through. And so, you know, as a baby, you're going to have to feed it and nurture it and take care of it. But as they're able to walk, you can, you know, you can be a little bit more hands off. And then when they're an adult, you're able to, you know, do what Brittney's doing and put very little into it, but monitor it.
Yeah. Well, I put the strategy in at this point. Like, it's still like very much like an adult. You still take the phone calls and you advise on how to not get in debt and things like that. It sort of works like that, where you're sort of strategic advising at this point. And
Yeah.
then you have very competent contractors, or if you have full-time staff, that can do it as well as you could. And that is something that takes a lot of letting go for some people, and you certainly have to find the right people. But you're only going to be able to get so far on your own. And so you have to get comfortable at some point letting go.
Yeah. And this micromanaging like we do in nursing, it does not work. So.
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, thank you, Brittney. It's been great to have you. And I so appreciate your time and all the value that you provided to our audience. And please take advantage of Brittney's free gift. It sounds amazing. And thank you again. And again, so appreciate it. So again, if you have a dream, you can. If you dream it, you can achieve it. So go for your dreams and get the support you need from these amazing people who are here to help. Okay, thanks everyone. Bye for now.